Hi, hello, and good morning. First of all, thank you for everyone for joining us today for our webinar, Redefining Southeast Asia's Tech Talent Strategy, jointly organized by Glints and EDB Singapore. First, a quick introduction. My name is Pui Lim. I am Commercial Director at Glints. That means I look after commercial strategy and operations, which includes our business units across Southeast Asia. I will be your moderator and host for today. To share a little bit about Glints, just very quickly, we are Southeast Asia's #1 tech platform for career development and recruitment, connecting businesses and talents. We operate in Indonesia, Vietnam, Taiwan, and Singapore, and offer businesses with job listings, local recruitment, and also cross-border recruitment, coupled with end-to-end offshoring services, including employer of record, payroll, and other administration. This is a service that we call Talent Hub, which we'll talk and probably mention a little bit today because of the context of this webinar. All our services in total have helped more than 30,000 companies and 1.5 million professionals be connected in the last 6 years since we were founded. Today, we are partnering EDB for this webinar. I think EDB is probably everybody is familiar with who EDB is, so I won't get too much into that. But big thanks to our friends at EDB for being long-time supporters and collaborators with Glints. Glints and EDB have worked together since 2018 when we set up our first Talent Hub operation, providing support for Singapore-based businesses to set up offshore tech teams in Nongsa, Batam, in Indonesia. Since then, the partnership with EDB and the Nongsa-based offshore hub has grown from strength to strength, now housing more than 700 full-time professionals working for Singapore companies. The topic today is redefining Southeast Asia's tech talent strategy. We have a great audience joining us today. I've seen many of you. The number of attendees is a nice number to have for any webinar organizer. I think many of you coming from businesses trying to understand potential solutions to tech hiring. With today's webinar, we want to cover what's happening in the tech landscape in the region, the implications for tech talent supply and demand, hear more from the government, in particular EDB's perspective of what this all means, and share some of the strategies, in particular offshoring, what's worked, what hasn't, of businesses trying to navigate the whole situation. I hope all of you in the audience will find this useful. We will run the session as a moderated Q&A, but we'll also open up the floor for questions. So please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box, follow the instructions on the screen, and we will answer as many of them as possible. I should also mention that today Glints is running a special event promotion for all of you who have attended or participated in this webinar. If you follow up with Glints afterwards on our Talent Hub service, there's a great offer for you to get started on offshoring with us, where we will waive your hiring fees for the first 2 hires that you make with us. Again, we are very pleased to have EDB organize this webinar with us, and are very excited to have a great panel of speakers representing, of course, EDB, as well as esteemed members of the industry in the form of AIA and NinjaVan. I'll kick off today by quickly introducing our panelists, or rather allowing them to introduce themselves. So first, we have Suresh Sukumar, Assistant Vice President of the Regional Partnerships and Singapore Businesses team at the EDB. Suresh, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Prelim. Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today, an honor to be among these esteemed panelists who have quite rich industry experience. So my name is Suresh. I'm from the Regional Partnerships team at EDB. So our team in EDB, really, while EDB looks at bringing in investments into Singapore, our team looks at how we can support Singapore-based companies or companies that are looking to be based in Singapore, find regional solutions to their operations. So traditionally, this has been, for example, looking at the twinning model when it comes to Batam or let's say Johor in the manufacturing side. But I think of late, over the last few years, we see a digital parallel evolving through Nongsa Digital Park as well. And I'm happy to touch more on this in today's panel session. Other than the regional partnerships team, I also support the Singapore businesses team at EDB. And previously, I spent almost a decade at the Singapore Foreign Ministry covering Indonesia, and also at a consultancy prior to this. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Suresh. Very glad to have you with us today. Next, I'd like to move on to Sean Chong, CTO at NinjaVan. Sean, please.
Hey, hi, William. Thank you so much. Yeah, very nice to be here this morning, sharing some insights into hiring practices or strategies. So, yep, my name is Sean. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of NinjaVan. We are a Singapore-born and bred company, started up in late 2014 in the e-commerce last mile industry. That's what we started off at. So I play the role of the CTO of the company, and my main job, I guess, is developing the product that we use to power our business. So 100% of our operational systems that we use for our logistics platform, our sortation, everything that the drivers use, our customers log in, it's all developed in-house, right? So you must imagine that we need to have quite a sizable team to build that, or outsource it or offshore it. Yeah, so look forward to discussing a little bit more about this today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sean. Very excited to hear what you have to share from the insights from NinjaVan. And finally, but definitely not least, we have Pak Gunawan Chew, who is CTO at AIA Singapore. Pak Gunawan, please.
Thanks, Pauline. Glad to be here. My name is Gunawan. I'm the CTO for AIA Singapore. Been with AIA for the past 7 years now. I was a CTO for AIA Indonesia before that. So quite familiar with the Indonesia landscape. So we started the partnership with Glints a couple of years ago, starting up the offshore development in Nongsa. So yeah, looking forward to sharing that experience here later. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Pak Gunawan. Thank you to all our esteemed panelists for your introductions. I'm very privileged to have all of you here again today to share your views and insights. The topic for the audience, again, is redefining Southeast Asia's tech talent strategy. And I think first it's important to set some context as to why this topic is important and relevant, and what are the questions that we might hope to answer today. First, in recent years, much of Southeast Asia has seen the emergence and booming growth of the digital economy. There has been a flourishing of technology startups from the region, the rise of C Group, Grab, Gojek Tokopedia, just to name a few. And we have seen also the growing interest of tech giants from other parts of the world, like the US or China, to invest into the region. Zoom, ByteDance, Tencent, to name another few. Large enterprises from the other industries have not stood still either. Digital transformation today is a macro trend. Companies are transitioning into online or mobile commerce, migrating existing infrastructures into the cloud, grappling with opportunities in machine learning, artificial intelligence, or issues such as cybersecurity or cryptocurrency. These trends are here to stay. This boom, anchored around Singapore in particular as a hub, has, as well as other major capital cities in and around the region, has seen the emergence of a tech talent crunch in these same cities. The basic problem is a supply-demand gap. In Singapore, for example, the minister who is responsible for the Smart Nation initiative, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan, has spoken of how Singapore produces only 2,800 ICT graduates a year, but he envisages the need for 60,000 tech professionals in the next 3 years. More recently, the pandemic has only exacerbated the supply shortage, with tighter border controls, therefore limiting the ability of businesses to bring in talent. On the demand side, the digital economy has given rise to a massive talent requirement from all types of businesses, big or small, enterprises, startups, tech companies, non-tech companies from financial services, media, retail, services, even manufacturing. All these businesses today are looking for software engineers, front-end, back-end, full stack, web, mobile, data engineers, product managers, and others. But they are struggling to find them. Meanwhile, international tech giants like ByteDance, Zoom, Tencent, or those from the region, Grab, Shopee, Gojek, have budgets with very aggressive remuneration, sometimes 30 or 40% above market, that give them an advantage in what can only be described as a war for talent. The tech talent crunch is particularly difficult, therefore, for everyone else. And what we have seen is that many businesses have had to rethink their talent distribution strategies, reconsider their options, reframe their view of talent sourcing by casting a wider net to the regional talent pool, rather than fighting within the red ocean of more constrained markets like Singapore. The interesting thing here is that there's actually an acute opportunity. We at Glints operate with a regional footprint in Southeast Asia, and we have observed, as noted in the report that we released with Monks Hill Ventures, one of our investors, in March this year, that it is possible to tap on quality talent with similar technical skills or capabilities in far larger talent pools like Indonesia or Vietnam, where supply is a lot more abundant and costs actually also at significantly lower levels. A software developer in Indonesia, for example, can cost 30% of a similar hire with similar skills and experience in Singapore. The question then is how? Remote working, as an inadvertent result of the pandemic, is now seen increasingly as a viable alternative, if not a norm. And it is providing businesses the opportunity to hire the best talent regardless of where they are located. It no longer matters if someone is based in Jurong or Jakarta. Businesses based in Singapore can now set up offshore teams of engineers, for example, in Batam or Ho Chi Minh City, and operate almost just as effectively as they would be doing in Singapore. This approach, leveraging the option of offshoring, is a distributed talent strategy. But this doesn't come without its risks and downsides. Productivity, data security, compliance are often top of mind considerations. But so is culture. How do you ensure that you can maintain the same standards in these setups? How do you manage communication? How do you continue to build team cohesion, a sense of company identity, and culture when remote? Finally, does going remote mean going fully remote? Or do we set up hybrid teams, continuing to privilege certain positions close at base, but offshoring others? These are the questions that we hope to shed some light on in today's panel. And I look forward to the discussion. And with that, I would like to invite Suresh from EDB to speak from his perspective on the developments of the tech landscape in Singapore and the region, and specifically about the role of Nongsa Batam in Indonesia in the view of the EDB. Suresh, please.
Thanks, Braden. Hi again, everyone. So I'll provide a brief overview on the digital landscape in Singapore before delving into one of the more exciting solutions that Braden mentioned that Singapore and Indonesia have been working on together in collaboration with partners such as Glints, which is Nongsa Digital Park. Next slide, please. So Singapore, it's a global Asia node for innovation, tech, and enterprise. We are strategically located at the heart of Southeast Asia with strong links to China, India, as well as the rest of the world. Being a key node in Southeast Asia for innovation companies can easily access and capture opportunities in the up and coming tech markets in Southeast Asia. So this is why companies from all over the world and across a range of industries continue to grow their operations in Singapore to serve Asia and international markets. Close to 90% of the world's top 100 tech companies have a presence in Singapore, with over 220,000 digital and media professionals hired in 2018. An additional 70,000 such roles will be created by this year. It is noteworthy that it's not just what you would say as tech companies who require such talent. In fact, such workers are in high demand for almost all companies undertaking digital transformations, including from the finance and manufacturing sectors. In fact, out of the new jobs to be created from investments that have come in over the past year, almost 25% will go towards digital roles that cut across all sectors. Companies can access a diverse range of qualified tech and digital talent in Singapore who can support their growth ambition. Talent is our lifeblood, and providing Singaporeans with good jobs and reskilling and upskilling opportunities is key to spurring growth and innovation. Next slide. So that said, however, when companies come to Singapore or are based in Singapore, they are plugging into more than just the local ecosystem, but the region and beyond. This will drive company growth and in turn create good jobs for Singaporeans while giving them exposure to larger markets from Singapore. One good example of this is Nongsa, a region located on the northeastern tip of Batam Island, one of the closest Indonesian islands to Singapore. Batam is already home to a thriving manufacturing hub, including many MNCs that have operations in Singapore. In 2017, when Indonesia's President Joko Widodo visited Singapore, he spoke about Batam becoming a digital bridge, connecting Singapore to other digital economy in cities in Indonesia, and the development of a digital cluster in Nongsa. Next slide. So with that idea in mind, we worked with our key partners in Nongsa to develop Nongsa Digital Park, a place to house and hub Indonesian tech talent, providing IT-related and digital services, particularly for Singapore-based companies. The first phase of the park was launched in March 2018 by the foreign ministers of Singapore and Indonesia. Next slide. So a key question on the minds of many companies will be, why Nongsa? Nongsa offers a cost-efficient tech solution for Singapore-based companies and an avenue for these companies to grow their product development capabilities and offerings by tapping on Indonesia's young and dynamic tech talent. So as Prelim mentioned earlier, the talent there, they're doing an exciting range of work covering a broad spectrum of IT-related products and services, ranging from Java to HTML, front-end, back-end, and so forth. The key difference, I would say, between Nongsa Digital Park and other IT service centers is the proximity to Singapore. Nongsa is a 40-minute ferry ride away, and that's shorter from a flight as compared to a flight from Singapore to Jakarta, and arguably even Singapore to KL. So your teams, they can shuttle between Nongsa and Singapore on a regular basis, of course, in a pre-COVID and again in a post-COVID setting. The facilities, they provide the ability to the Singapore-based teams to have close discussions, tighter coordinations, and faster in-person troubleshooting and interventions. So many of the companies have found Nongsa's proximity to Singapore to be a great advantage. From the handful of companies and talents when we launched in 2018, Nongsa has grown to house over 1,000 talents, serving some 160 companies today. So as you can see from the slide here, the spectrum of companies that have set up shop or using services in Nongsa Digital Park really cut across a broad range of sectors. Yeah, you have larger MNCs like AIA, NinjaVan, FWD, RGA, to smaller startups such as WebImp. And they cover a broad set of industries from transport and advertising through to insurance and human resource. I'll let my fellow panelists from AIA and NinjaVan speak more about their unique needs and let them to consider Nongsa and their experiences there. Next slide. So looking forward, we have big plans and ambitions for Nongsa. The next phase of Nongsa's development, Nongsa Digital Town, or D-Town for short, was launched by the economic ministers of Indonesia and Singapore in March of this year. D-Town will cover 10 hectares of land jointly developed by Citra Mas Group and Sinar Mas Land, with the designing done by Serbana Jurong. It will host an additional 8,000 tech talent when completed, with co-working and co-living spaces, digital training centers, offices, and lifestyle services. The other area of focus will be on data centers, with a view to build a data center hub proximate to Singapore and to grow an ecosystem that will be complementary to Singapore. So I'll stop here and happy to have further discussions on Nongsa and how it can support companies' digital needs during the panel session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Suresh, for sharing insights from EDB's perspective, particularly on the initiatives in Nongsa Batam, the initiatives that Singapore and Indonesian governments are working together on to further strengthen the region's role with in the tech landscape or tech developments. The best way to fully understand how businesses have taken advantage of the opportunity and capitalize on these developments is to hear from those in the industry. With that, I would like to now commence the panel discussion, the Q&A, starting with our industry practitioners, our participants, Pak Gunawan and Sean, to share their experiences from AIA and Ninja Van. Maybe just to kick us off, Pak Gunawan and Sean, can you maybe tell us, what does your current talent setup look like today in terms of onshore versus offshore? And what was the main motivation that got you guys started to think about procuring offshore teams? Maybe we can start with Pak Gunawan.
Yeah,
Gunawan, please. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Obviously, I think we spoke a lot about the needs of the talents in Singapore, and Singapore being not as big country as Indonesia, that's for sure. We have the crunch sooner or later. So we started our journey about 2 years plus ago that, we started finding difficulties of hiring in Singapore and look up outside. Obviously, AIA, we are a multinational company and we operate in many countries. We also have a development center in China to support us in Guangzhou. But at the same time, we think that we probably need to look further and we need to get more talent. So having been I was in Indonesia as a CTO as well for about 4 years plus. So I see that there's also talents from the Indonesians. So NUMSA came as an recommendations by the EDB. We had discussions a few years back. So I personally went there, take a look. It was quite a challenge at the beginning, but I think at the end now, we look at today's, we have about 140 plus people working from NUMSA. From Singapore, our workforce is about 190. So we have 300 plus people, technology strength within the AIA. And not to mention about the offshore, so in China. As the business needs to be more digital, so the skill set on technology is definitely being the driving force of us looking continuously for technology talents. So, I think Indonesia with 250 million populations obviously has a certain advantage in terms of it. I must say that there's a lot of growing young talents that is hungry to get the opportunities. And the company like AIA in Singapore obviously provide that platforms for them to experience learning the new technology. So we kind of like win-win situations for us to be able to gather the talents at the same time for the young talents in Indonesia to pick up the new technology and learning from us. So that's how we started, and it's keep going.
Thanks a lot, Pak Gunawan. Maybe now I turn it over to Sean from Ninja Van.
Brilliant. Thanks. So question was, how does our current setup look like now, right? In terms of onshore versus offshore. So a little bit of maybe history into the past. When we started off Ninja Van, we kind of went in and saying that we want to disrupt the logistics industry, so everything's about tech, right? The company started up with 80% of the workforce, small team, just 10 of us, and 80% of the workforce being from the tech industry, meaning software engineers at that point of time. So everything was in Singapore, right? Onshore and in-house. We grew very, very quickly. We started opening into our neighboring countries, Malaysia within the 12 months of operation, going to Indonesia. Today we are in 6 countries. So we have an engineering team of about 180, and that's spread across 3 locations right now. So Singapore, Indonesia, Jakarta, and Ho Chi Minh City. So it was we started offshoring actually in, I think, around the 2nd year of our operations, mainly because of the tech crunch. I think we've all addressed this issue. So for us, hiring pre-COVID has been very, very, very difficult already, right? You have crazy amounts of competition. In the keynotes, you were also speaking about people, the folks with huge pockets, paying 30-40%. And I can share with you my personal experience. We have lost a lot of very high potential fresh grad hires, right? Just because they're getting $1,000 more. And coming from school where your income was zero to something, that makes a lot of difference, right? So plus today you have COVID. Everyone's all rushing towards digitalization, digitization. Tech becomes so much more critical, right? A lot of companies have to go online now. And that just causes even more problems for us in this region. You spoke also about the big boys, Zoom, ByteDance, all setting up here. So we really had to start looking at different ways to increase our capacity, right? So the motivation for us, and I believe for most tech companies, is that when you're trying to optimize whatever industry you're in, most of the time your technical bandwidth, right, your product development is going to be your bottleneck, right? And this is very true for us. So obviously we are looking at offshoring a little bit more, not just offshoring in-house devs, but even other strategies like outsourcing, right? So yep, that's our current setup right now.
Thanks a lot, Sean. Maybe if we just stay with Ninja Van for a little bit. So you were forced from a capacity or bandwidth consideration to consider offshoring because of what was happening with the crunch. But what were some of the things that considerations which would have helped you back a little bit before getting into it? For example, with productivity, with how you communicate or manage the team. Were those things on your mind as well when you first set up the first offshore team?
Yeah, of course. It's very different to have physical face-to-face daily stand-ups, right? So the first thing when we started the Indonesia team, we didn't go in all guns blazing saying that, okay, we're going to set up a big team there, right? Another motivation obviously is the talent pool. Much bigger country, much more population to go from. Cost is a very huge thing. But when we set up in Indonesia, we really took a very, very small baby steps. We went in saying, okay, let's just try one function, okay? And for us, that was test automation, QA. So we set up Jakarta as our QA center. When we did that, there were quite a bit of problems, to be honest. For example, remote working was still pretty new for us in terms of running the stand-ups, doing presentations, doing what you call peer programming, right? Where we could sit together. Onboarding of our engineers is one of the most critical, most time-consuming processes, because in any tech company, you have a lot of proprietary tech, right? It takes several months before a new engineer can become productive, especially in the very new, for a very non-mature company. You don't really have a lot of documentation yet. Everything is all, information is all stuck in individual people, right? So onboarding was difficult. Culture was also very, very different, right? When we went to Indonesia, we also realized that it's a very, people like hierarchies. In Singapore, it's pretty flat, right? So apart from that, language also comes into concern, which is also honestly still a challenge we're facing today. When we hire our guys in the offshore centers, right? Actually, English is one of the key requirements, because the product managers are all working mainly out of Singapore, so they've got to understand how to communicate with us, the business users, right? And that also automatically it cuts us out from quite a huge segment of the talent pool. Yeah. But there are some interesting ways that we're working on to solve that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to you on those interesting ways in a little bit. But thanks for sharing your considerations when it came to who you could recruit or hire based on language as a key consideration, and also sharing about communication, right? Daily stand-ups, presentations, peer programming. How do you actually do that on a remote basis, and learning to adapt to that? And onboarding, you spoke a lot about that as well. And I think your approach initially was to take baby steps. We'll get into a little bit more detail in a bit. But I want to turn this now back to Pak Gunawan and AIA. Did you guys have similar sort of reverse considerations that you had to think a little bit about? Obviously, I think AIA's journey, as you described in your overview, a lot more experience already having setups in China, even before you started to look beyond China. How was the thought process there?
Well, I guess we found similarities with what Sean is sharing too. I think it's slightly different for us is that when we set it up this, obviously it was pre-COVID. We're looking at the instead of flying 6-7 hours to China, we were like talking about taking 45-minute ferry to Nongsa. And then, and the proximity of the office was very close to the ferry. And we want to build a very young collaborative teams that can work, slightly closer or maybe a lot closer to Singapore. And that's how it was actually started. I myself personally and my team, we went there quite often to make sure that the people are engaged. We have a nice place to collaborate. And that was all it was started, and it was working fine. Communications is always a challenge for some, but not for me personally, but for some of the people. But we managed to overcome that with very close collaborations, daily stand up, working together, regular visit to Nongsa, etc. Obviously all these things change again, right? When we have COVID hitting, and even we set up office in Nongsa and people are now working from home, that throw us a little bit even more bigger challenge on collaborations. We are now working mostly on Microsoft Teams for collaborations, But I guess maybe for us, as we had the opportunity to start pre-COVID, we get to know the teams quite well. We set up quite within the 2.5 years there, we started from almost zero with one employee, and then now today we have 140 plus. Even before COVID, we already reached about hundreds number, and then the team are quite quite know each other for sometimes, so that would help a little bit. Again, like I said, now working collaboration differently, it has a different difficulties, that's for sure. We just hope that things could go back to what pre-COVID is, and we could still be having that collaborations park in Nongsa. Otherwise, what's the point of EDB and Indonesia government building all these things if it's not going to be a place for us to enjoy, right? With the vaccinations, everything going on, hopefully this could end. And I believe that the close collaboration is very important for any success, working offshoring, whether it's China or Indonesia or many other places that we have people working offshore as well. I think that is probably the key success for us. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pak Gunawan. What I'm hearing from you is that even if you're offshoring, I think the need for close collaboration through frequent visits, and also I think having people housed in a common facility in Nongsa, having a critical mass of people there, that's actually very important, right? Because that allows that kind of culture to foster there. And I think you're quite fortunate because, as you said, you started before COVID. So you already had that critical mass, even as you went into COVID, to lean on, even as we go into home-based setups. But from your perspective, getting back to the original setup, the pre-COVID setup, everyone in the office over in Nongsa, that's very important.
Yeah, nothing beats that, having the close collaborations, be able to, especially when you have so many young talents that collaborating together, they enjoy the working togetherness, whether it's going out for coffee together or working together to discuss. I guess that's key. Yeah.
I'm going to stay with AIA for a little bit. AIA is a very, very large international insurance company. It's a financial institution. It's in a very regulated industry. Considerations around compliance, regulation, and of course, I would also imagine data security would also weigh heavily on your minds when you start to look at offshoring. How did you think about all of that from your perspective?
Well, there's no doubt about it. Obviously, when we set up the Nongsa, it is not something that is new to us. The security is always the number one priority when it comes to setting up our ecosystem infrastructures. Majority of us now, we moving more towards cloud, using a public cloud. We secure the landing zone and everything, set it up. It's no longer really a serious issue. Obviously, we have endpoint device control for every notebook or every tools that we use. It was a challenge at the beginning, but I guess we overcome that. We have a good infrastructure set up now, even between between Nong Sai and Singapore. So that also take care of the security issues. But again, at the end of the day, the world has changed, right? Most of the companies now operating, running things on cloud. So I think it's a level playing field now, whether you try to work, even in Singapore, you have people working from home. The security concern is the same, whether it doesn't matter whether it is, when you work on cloud, whether it's working from Batam or Singapore, is all level playing field, I guess. Yeah.
And what about from a compliance perspective? Have regulators caught up with their own expectations?
Well, to be very frank, when we start up this team, we were looking at more of juniors, developers, help desk support, securities, and that they are part of the team as supporting functions into this. The team in Singapore is basically still shielding with trying to take care of the critical part, like on how do we comply, etc. I don't see that much of the compliance issue. We probably need to be more doing our proper due diligence when it comes to any offshoring opportunities. That has passed, obviously. I mean, we have been there for 2+ years now. We have gone through all those so-called due diligence, proper protections, compliance, security stuff. It is now is almost very transparent to us, where the team's working, they're working within one infrastructure systems that we have set up. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pak Gunawan. I'm going to steer the conversation now back to Sean. Sean, touch a little bit, tease us a little bit with interesting ways he had to take at Ninja Van to solve some of the initial issues. Sean, would you like to maybe now talk us through a little bit more detail and some examples?
Interesting ways. Okay, so don't know whether I'm getting this question correctly. Some of what has already been mentioned by yourself, the other panelists, like for instance, culture, right? Efficiency. So culture, I feel is a very important point that is a bit underplayed sometimes. As one of those, we're branded as a bit more fun, startup-ish company, right? If you compare us to our other peers in the industry, usually logistics players, very serious, get the job done. But we come in with our logos, the ninja smiling and everything, very cute. So that also kind of like exemplifies in our workforce. We have a pretty young senior management team. The way we operate meetings, very much more casual. People come to office in shorts and t-shirts. So you would be very strange if you come even in a collared shirt, right? A button shirt. So when it comes to, let's say, human relationships, right? So some of the challenges, not just offshore, like some of you have already said that remote working, offshoring kind of synonymous already, right? You whether you're in Hougang, whether you're in Jakarta, right? So this lack of human interactions, I feel, has caused a lot of engagement issues throughout the company. And I find that so important because your relationships that you have at work to me and to a lot of people who hold this culture to their heart, close to their heart, is not just a place where you come in 9 to 6, 10 to 7, write some code or do whatever you're doing and then take home a paycheck. Work becomes second home, right? It's a place where you spend probably more time with your colleagues than you do with your family at home. I mean, that sometimes that's quite true. So the kind of personal relationships that we have, and when it's good, right, you will realize that when it comes to work, communication is so much easier. Things get done so much quicker because you understand each other. So let me give you some examples. When we started off that dev center in Jakarta, in Ho Chi Minh, right? What you start seeing is that, okay, although they are in-house engineers, right? They just sit there in a different country, but they look at Singapore engineers as like, yeah, you are sitting in the regional headquarters. So it seems that the engineers in Singapore are more important, right? They're doing more important work, but that's hardly the truth. And also, you know, in engineering, we always try to do things more optimally. So we built, in the technical world, we call it like common modules, right? Or common libraries where we want to reuse it. So we had problems such as the guys, they wanted to run their own thing. They didn't want to use the commons that we created regionally. They wanted to just build everything from scratch. They want to run their own infrastructure and everything, but that goes against costing. It goes against efficiency, right? And we actually had to fly people down to convince them that, hey, if you use what we have already done, which the whole company is using, things will be very much faster, right? And we couldn't actually achieve that over video calls. But when we send people down, you actually show that I actually care about you, right? Sometimes it's about showing face, right? Then when it comes to COVID, I talked about the engagement problem, you know, all video, everything is Zoom. People also get a bit Zoom fatigue. We started doing a lot more engagement activities like games. Last time it used to be you hang together, you play soccer, you play whatever foosball, you know, in physical, right? Now it becomes e-games, right? People are playing Dota, people are playing League of Legends. But the whole thing is about keeping everyone together as a close-knit family. I must say it's been a challenge, even trying to do all that, right? It comes nothing close to being able to sit, you know, together, going out for dinners and all. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sean. So what I'm hearing from you, engagement is so important, and nothing beats that face-to-face. And similar to, I think what Pak Gunawan spoke on earlier, I mean, even if the team was in Nongsa, the advantage of being able to take a 45-minute ferry ride over to spend time with the team was extremely important. Just as in Ninja Van, the importance of flying people down into Singapore from Vietnam or Indonesia to have those discussions was so critical. Just staying with Ninja Van a little bit, earlier on you also talked about how when you first started, you were quite careful. You started quite small. So you started with only, I think, tech or QA automation as a first function. Can you just tell us a little bit about then what happened from there? Right? How did you assess what was then when you were ready to get a bit deeper, and how did you progressively get into it?
Yeah. So QA is also a developer. It's also a development function because you have to write code, right? So so the good thing about us is that when we built our architecture, we built it in microservices architecture, just sexy way of saying service-oriented architecture, right? And what that really did for us is it allows us to kind of like just give full ownership of code bases to individual teams, right? So that held very true. It wasn't really for the offshoring thing. It's more for like even within Singapore, right? We want to give the whole life cycle of the development all the way to delivery, all the way to support to a specific team. We can also set performance standardized KPIs on these teams, right? I mean, there's a lot more advantages to microservices, but the main thing for us is that when we are able to split this, we are able to actually like give the offshore centers in Ho Chi Minh, in Jakarta, full ownership of the software, right? So they do it no longer requires that I make a code change on a monolithic repository. I make a pull request, someone in Singapore must approve it, right? So this also gets rid of that inferior complex where, oh, someone must approve me. But now I have full responsibility of that. Yeah, that's been working very well for us.
Thanks a lot, Sean. I'm going to turn it back to AIA. One last question on the industry side before we get on to EDB and questions for Suresh. Bapak Gunawan, I mean, you run, as you've mentioned now a few times, 140 or more than 140 engineers out of Nongsa, and then you've also got that set up in China. I mean, you've got a pretty large scale offshore presence now. It sounds like it, anyways, to me. When you hear Sean talk about how he rolls it out on his side, I mean, what's your version of it from AIA's perspective?
Yeah, we kind of like as when we started at the beginning, primarily we were looking at more of the similar to Sean, application developers, those kind of talents, but we don't want to be restricting ourselves of just because then you will fight for a small pool of resources. There's so many functions within technology today that we need to support. For example, even like infrastructure, help desk service, on the technology security, technology risk. I think we have a good team of technology risk people now helping us on the penetration testings, even doing the TPS data parties, as outsourcing agreement, etc. So it's kind of like we try to just continue to get talents, right? Whatever area that we could get, we don't really specific. Although today, I must say that the biggest pool of people that we have is still in the application development. But even application development, we're looking at front end, whether it's React.js, whether it's on the database side and Databricks, we use a lot of Postgres, and we continue to grow the people. I guess the mindset is not about just continue to look for the ready talent. You have to be willing to invest to train these people up, because there is no university graduate who will be able to have the latest and greatest technology and ready to work for you on day one. That will be impossible. I guess technology moves so fast. I don't think any university will be able to catch up on what is the best things next, right? So the principle is more about looking at the bright talents that have done well. When it's fresh graduate, you're looking at what is their academic records, whether they have a good attitudes, willing to learn, good attributes. So those are the ones that we continue to gather. We give them the opportunity for them to try out new things that, today I may be part of the infrastructure security team. Tomorrow I could be joining the application development team, and vice versa. So that opportunity also try to fit in the right talent in the right place. Some people may not have certain talent, but because they mix with a group of people on a certain skill and they like what is a new opportunity, we give them the freedom to choose and how do they want to shape their careers. So that was kind of like our strategy. We know that initially when we set up, it was not that easy to hire. Even the Indonesians will be prefer to stay in Jakarta than coming over to Batam. And the Jakarta obviously have a much bigger pool of tech resources. So we're looking at the more of the local university graduates in Batam, and they have produced quite a decent amount of people as well. So, but we also always try to mix. We try to attract talents from Jakarta that don't mind to work from Batam, and we had quite a number of them too. So that kind of being open-minded of looking at how you set up the composition, not looking at tackling these specific functions. Obviously, in Japan, they might be doing it slightly different from us, but we'll just get the number, because we need the number to start, that people can start the collaborations. You need the ecosystem to be set up for people to be able to work, gaining from each other, learning from each other, and continue to grow as a close-knit community. And that is how it is. And in no time, we grow that number. And now they are supporting almost every functions of technology for AIA. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot for sharing that perspective, Pak Binoy. And I think that's a good segue to come back to the questions for Suresh from EDB's perspective, from the government's perspective. Because I think what you just described, and we talked about Nongsa, and your approach is you're looking to bring in young, high quality, capable talent with lots of potential, and to bring them in, and you cultivate, you grow, and you develop them. So I want to now steer the question to Suresh. Suresh, you talked about how this all started with NDP, and then now you're looking a little bit forward. You've just announced Nongsa D-Town as an next big development that's coming up. How does EDB see the role of the government in all of this? When you hear the industry's perspectives, is EDB's role here simply to provide the real estate, the facility, or is it more than that? Yeah.
Thanks, Brady. So I think if we take a step back, I mean, how from a EDB's perspective, from a government perspective, how we would see the benefit of Nongsa, or the key benefit of Nongsa, is really how it gives company the flexibility to structure and manage the operations both in Singapore as well as the offshore teams. So for instance, if you look at it, many companies, they choose to site their leadership management, their digital technology R&D, and their product engineering teams in Singapore. The talent that they find here in Singapore, I think, is quite well suited for such roles. And many foreign executives also find Singapore a suitable location to both build and base their teams. But for companies, they may find that for certain roles, Singapore may be less suitable or less cost competitive. And here, I'm thinking about roles like digital solutions delivery implementers. So like, for example, your system support engineers, software developers, development ops engineers, etc. Having these teams at a nearshore location such as Nongsa will allow for a complementarity in the type of work that's taking place between the two locations. And Sean touched on this earlier, the problems related to integration of teams, especially when they're based in two different locations. And I think this point was made before, but just to emphasize it again, that is really one of the key benefits that Nongsa offers companies. The ability for the Singapore-based teams to make quick and timely interventions on the ground in Nongsa, your 40-minute ferry ride away, or even to have those teams in Nongsa come to Singapore, either for company events, for short-term training, and for upskilling, etc. And that really helps to build a more integrated team. But the benefit really runs both ways, I think. And this is where the G2G collaboration comes in. For the talent that is based in Nongsa, they are able to get the valuable experience in working for regional and even global MNCs, with the opportunity for them to build on this in their future roles, be it in Indonesia, in Singapore, or even other locations in the region.
When you talk about development, upscaling, and exposure, I think that's what you're is it just the role from EDB's perspective? Is this just the role? Is this just left up to the businesses that have set up to? Is that the role that they have to play on themselves, or does EDB also see a role for the Singapore and Indonesian governments to play in all of this? What's your perspective on that? Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, I think for companies, a key part of it is getting the right talent for the job at hand. And for that, really what is critical is training for the talent. So here, I think the best way forward is partnerships between government and I think the industry players. So in Nongsa, I mean, I think you'll be familiar with this very well. Glints has set up a training arm, Glints Academy, that provide bootstrapping courses in a range of areas like UI, UX, front end, back end, etc. And I think so far you've trained almost 400 trainees who have come through your courses, and now you're into your 11th run already. I think Nongsa also houses Apple's third developer academy, which it set up there in partnership with Infinite Learning. So that focuses more on software development, startup creation, and app design. The Developer Academy itself was launched in March of 2019, and it took in its first full batch of 100 trainees in March 2020. They graduated at the end of last year, and now the second batch of 100 trainees are undergoing their 10-month-long stint. So talent for Nongsa itself, I think, is drawn from across the top institutions in Indonesia, and this ranges from Batam, Java, and Sumatra. In Batam itself, I think there are several IHLs that offer computing courses as well as upskilling courses. For example, you have Batam Polytechnic, which offers diplomas in informatics, multimedia, and various courses in software, application, broadcasting network, animation, etc. This is, I think, a key area where government partnership can come in. So for example, we have worked with Batam Polytechnic in having them deliver courses that they've structured together in partnership with Singapore IHL. So for example, Temasek Polytechnic worked together with Batam Polytechnic to come up with courses for delivery for companies in Nongsa. These are the kinds of solutions that I think EDB is open to supporting, and we look forward to supporting how when companies come with unique training needs, Sometimes you'll be able to find this within Indonesia itself, or sometimes you need to structure something a bit more uniquely. We can come in to find partnerships, including with Singapore IHLs for delivery to support the Nongsa ecosystem.
Thanks a lot, Suresh. I have one more question, which I think many members of the audience might have in their minds. 2 weeks ago, I think it was about 2 or 1.5 weeks ago, President Widodo announced the setup of special economic zones. And Batam, I think, is in relation to this announcement. What are the implications of this announcement for Nongsa or otherwise? And how does this inform the future forward-looking pipeline of what's to come, even beyond Nongsa D-Town, as you touched on earlier on in your keynote?
So I think this is a very positive development. We'll have to wait for announcement from the Indonesian authorities on the specific implementing regulations from the Nongsa SEZ announcement. But it's a very strong marker of the commitment that the government of Indonesia has towards the ongoing efforts. Part of the beauty of the current hiring model in Nongsa is really that I think companies, they don't have to incur hefty charges, which you typically might have to incur if you incorporate your entity in Indonesia. Yet you can kind of use it as a hiring channel to develop tech talent. So it's a promising avenue for companies to curate teams and custom build their specific needs and to ensure their outsourcing needs are met. And I'm quite encouraged that the Indonesian government is also similarly supportive of this. The other key benefit that we look forward to coming out of the Nongsa SEZ is really how it can attract more data center players to Nongsa, to set up Nongsa as part of a wider DC ecosystem in the region. Nongsa offers quite a few favorable conditions for DC, such as ideal seismic conditions, good security, availability of power, and it also has the highest count of landing stations and single route cables in Indonesia, with 13 international submarine fiber optic cables that are landing in Batam, just about 2.5 kilometers from NDP, linking Nongsa to the rest of Indonesia, Singapore, and the US West Coast. So there's definitely opportunity to grow the pie, and we look forward to more announcements from the Indonesian government related to the implementing regulations arising from the SEZ announcement.
Great, thanks a lot for that, Suresh. And with that, I want to close the moderated Q&A with the panelists at this juncture and move to answer some of the audience's questions. We have questions already posted in the Q&A box. Again, a quick reminder to members of the audience: if you have questions, don't post them on the chat, post them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to them as many as we can within the allocated time. I'm going to start with some questions first for the industry. So there's a couple of questions here, quite specific ones. We're just starting with Pak Gunawan on AIA side. There's a question around having decided to start in Nongsa. How did you grow to 140? When you started, how many did you start with in Nongsa? What was the minimum size to get going?
Yeah, thanks. Good questions. Actually, we start from zero. I guess when we start, we don't have anyone. We started the interview and building up the team that way. I guess the more important answer to these questions is, what is the minimum that we require? I would answer probably differently if it's before COVID and after COVID, because now even in any part of the world, you hiring people in, then they straight away they work remotely anyway. I don't know. I mean, in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, I think we kind of still have some sort of work from home kind of a default. So even you hire people in Singapore today, straight away they're probably working from home. There's no different of whether they are sitting in Singapore or sitting in Batam or sitting in any part of the world. But if, let's say, situation change and we could, obviously nothing beats collaborations. Then we talk about how to build the culture, how to build the togetherness, etc. So that when it comes to that, then obviously there's some sort of a critical mass needed for them. I would say there's no magic number. But if you could even start like having 5 or 10 people to start with, that's still a good size of people. Probably 1 or 2 is probably too small for people to get a meaningful so-called offshoring or outsourcing setup. But when we set it up, it would take us about a few months before we get into the number 10, and that to me that is good enough for us to continue to grow. You try to not to split the team into 2 teams. Preferably they are all working into a similar job scope and functions, so that they can have more integrations and work together better. So you don't want one to be the infrastructure guy, one technology risk guy, one data warehouse guy, and one application guy. I think that would be the difficult. But if you set up as a functions that they can a lot more collaboration, talking together, even the 5 developers setting up and developing one functions or one product, it could work. You don't have to be like having 100 people to start with before you could get anything meaningful. Then you will see. I guess it works for us. It may not work for everyone. I must be, open to say that. Depends on how the team grow together, and you could see that you can really get the productivities with the team, that no matter how big or how small it is. Yeah, I hope I answered that questions. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Arfak. I'm going to take the next question to Sean. Sean, you might want to touch on that first question as well. I mean, what do you think about is the minimum size before you start? But alongside that, there's a specific question for you, comparing Jakarta versus Ho Chi Minh City. Having worked with both of those cities, how would you compare them? Sean, please.
Yeah, minimum size. I think it's 0 lah, minimum size. Okay, I mean, it's very hard to just go in and then suddenly start with 10 or whatever. So actually, our strategy for new country starting up, not just in tech, but operations or whatever, right? First, we like to hire top down. We want to make sure that we have a good head of the lab to make sure that you can run things, can report up to us since we're not there. Mainly is a guy who can set up everything, because it's a lot of administrative duties, right? Get the office and whatever not. Yeah, for us, I think why do we put our dev centers in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh? It's very natural because we are regional business. We already have like our Ninja Van operations in these countries. So to us, when we start up, it's very easy. We just ask the ops, give us some office space. We put someone there and then we see how it goes, right? So for Vietnam, we were a bit lucky because when we hired in our tech head there, he was a very influential guy, at least in the industry. And when he joined over, he managed to pull over quite a substantial size of the team. So it's true, people do follow their bosses around, right? Regarding Jakarta and Vietnam, what's the difference? Well, honestly, in Indonesia, the competition is also quite crazy. You have the big boys, Tokopedia, Bukalapak, and all these. And very surprising, when you are trying to cream off the top talent, right? The salaries even in Indonesia is extremely high. Okay, so and a lot of the folks in Indo, they tend to know the bigger companies a lot more. So the guys who are really good, they also prefer to stick with a local company that focuses more on the Indo market, because that's where volume, you have crazy amounts of volume. Your systems are a lot more complex, right? Or so it seems. Yeah, so that also plays a part. Well, I can't tell you what's the difference, but I can tell you our experience is that in Vietnam, when we started up, we had a lot more success getting talent in, right? The team grew a lot quicker. It is still growing a lot quicker now in Vietnam than in Indonesia. We kind of feel a little bit of that more talent crunch situation in Jakarta versus in Ho Chi Minh. I know for certain that Vietnam is one of the top countries that a lot of companies are setting up dev shops. You go to all your outsourcing agencies, you realize that all their teams are there. We are in Ho Chi Minh now, but we are also exploring potentially setting up a team in northern Vietnam. Vietnam produces, I think, 100,000 tech graduates a year. You also see some patterns in terms of like what kind of programming languages you can get people better in different countries. Like Myanmar, I think, was very PHP or Ruby or something like that. Vietnam is starting to predominantly was PHP, but now we are doing a lot of work in Golang. We're getting a good candidates who come through the door who can write code in Golang. But to us, actually, language doesn't matter. It's just you can always pick up a new language anytime, right? Yeah, I'd like to just conclude this question by saying that I just feel that Vietnam is much easier for us to grow the dev center. Yeah.
Great, thanks a lot, Sean. Suresh, there's quite a few questions here in relation to what's the perspective on what does this all mean for Singapore's own competitiveness, and what does it mean for Singapore talent, right? Are we doing anything to make sure that universities are churning out enough talent, or to upskill the workforce in Singapore? What's EDB's perspective on that?
So I would say that when we look at talent cooperation, at least cooperation in the field of talent between Singapore and Indonesia, I wouldn't look at it as a zero-sum game. And I think that's definitely not how Nongsa is set up. There are benefits for companies to be based in Singapore. Part of it is related to talent availability. And the Singapore government has undertaken various initiatives like the Tech Skills Accelerator Initiative, which is really a suite of programs to help ICT and non-ICT professionals upgrade and acquire new skills to stay competitive. And there are initiatives such as this where the government is helping to produce a tech talent in Singapore. But I think companies should also look at it from a slightly broader perspective. What is the value that Singapore brings to the company? Is it the connectivity, the physical connectivity, the digital connectivity to other markets? Would this be a place where they feel they have the right regulatory setup to run their businesses? And these are some of the other considerations that come into play when companies consider where to set up their teams. That said, I think there is still quite a bit of room for collaboration when we look at Nongsa. And I saw a couple of the questions, I think, related to the quality of talent and the cost of talent when you look at Batam and you look at Indonesia. I would say that when we're looking at Batam, you're not just looking at who are the people who are in Batam who are available for hire. Of course, that is one source, but I think the catchment is much wider. There are very prominent and good universities in Java. You have the likes of University of Indonesia, Institute of Technology Bandung, University Gajah Mada, as well as you have some of them on the island of Sumatra as well, in Medan, in Padang. And these are the catchment that I think companies should be thinking about when they're hiring in Batam. I think Glints, you'll be in a better place, I think, to kind of elaborate a bit more on the efforts to join this talent to Batam. At the end of the day, it's going to be difficult if you're going to say that, oh, I want to join the top talent from, let's say, Jakarta, ask them to move to Batam. I mean, in Jakarta as well, there's a thriving and it's very rich tech ecosystem. You have the likes of Gojek, Grab, Tokopedia, and many other companies that have set up shop there. But that said, I think that the pool is big enough and to foster this kind of collaboration in Batam. And talent at the end of the day is very mobile. They may be in Batam for a certain period of time. They may then explore the opportunities in Jakarta, in Singapore, or somewhere else altogether in the region. So I think it's just being open to what are the opportunities there and drawing from a wider pool of talent to foster collaboration.
Thanks a lot, Suresh. Yeah, I'll just add to that by saying that I think the attractiveness of working for Singapore-based businesses by coming to Batam is actually also quite a strong factor for persuading talents to move or relocate to Batam, even if they are originally based in somewhere else in Indonesia. We've seen that play out in quite a few instances. We're running out of time, so I want to wrap up now and move away from the audience Q&A. I apologize to all of you whom I've not been able to put enough time to answer your questions. please do try to follow up or reach out to either Glints or our panelists after the session, and perhaps we can find ways to answer those questions. But I want to invite our panelists for their closing comments in answer to one final question from me, which is all of this, the tech talent crunch, remote offshoring as an option, is this here to stay? Is this a long-term thing? Or is it merely the crunch is a short-term situation, it will pass, and we get back to life as it was before all of this? What are your views? Maybe we can start with Pak Gunawan.
Yeah, my view is that you know, the demand on technologies, you know, on these resources, especially as we go into more digitalizations, whether it's COVID or not, I think the world has changed towards, you know, being digitally service, more digitally servicing oriented organizations. So that would definitely mean that the world will not have enough talent. Forget about just talking about Singapore. You know, I think the demand of these will continue to increase. So no matter where you are today, you know, you will have that competitions. And offshoring is just one option that, you know, that I would think will stay for a long while, because you will continue to have that demand that you can't fulfill locally. That's why you have to reaching out, offshoring, you know, on talent. Having said that, I'm not even sure whether the so-called virtual collaborations will work in the long run. Too early for us to say that. But if it does, you know, you could potentially hire people for all around the world. You don't even need to have one center of offshoring. To so-called, you're offshoring it to the worldwide, you know, for all your needs on technology talents. But that will be even bigger challenge for collaborations. Yeah. So in short, I would still say that it's definitely to stay. I don't think, especially in the context of Singapore, that you will be able to have fulfill enough. And I would say that the demand will only continue to increase if it is not even in a much more rapid pace in the near future to come. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pak. Sean, your view?
Yeah, I mean, I echo the same feeling. I just offshoring is not new. It's, you know, it's really what we do whatever we can, and to me that's you know, hybrid workforce. Talent crunch, yes, demand's definitely only going to go up. The whole world is going to go digital and everything, so this problem's here to stay. Obviously, you know, besides offshoring, there are a lot of other methods, right? Also on your onshore, I know that the government, our government, all countries, they're starting to increase intakes, you know, into technical courses. You're seeing a lot more interesting technical courses in colleges right now. So yeah, we'll continue to look at that. I also touched a little bit on outsourcing. One of the questions in the Q&A. Yes, we also tap into outsourcing, but on non-core stuff, right? Very MVP related projects. Yeah, but yeah, in short, don't think offshoring is going anywhere. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Sean. And Suresh, maybe wrapping it all up from your perspective, is it here to stay?
Yeah, I think the tech talent crunch is going to be here for a while. And I think this is where really we should look at offshoring or nearshoring as an opportunity rather than a threat. At the end of the day, to build an ecosystem, companies need talent at various levels. It's not just at one single level. And how they source for talent at different levels and where they may source their talent from, I think is going to be a key factor for companies to consider going forward. And for Singapore, I think more broadly, for Singapore to stay competitive, both overall as an economy and in terms of ensuring that the talent in Singapore is competitive, I think having that link to the region is essential. You have to have people in Singapore who have exposure to the region, Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific region, having experience serving in the region, having experience working with people in the region. And that really is the value add that they bring to the table that enhances Singapore's competitiveness.
And thanks a lot, Suraj, for that. And with that, I want to again thank all our panelists for joining us today and giving us such valuable insights based on your experience of all of this and all from your various perspectives from either the government or the industry. Thanks to all of you for taking part today. Before I close the session, I just want to mention a few events and activities that Glints is running in the next few weeks in case there's interest from the audience to participate. Glints, as I mentioned, is the #1 Southeast Asia talent platform. We're doing recruitment, we're connecting businesses and professionals. In 21st to 27th July, we're actually running a mega virtual career week in Indonesia. It's going to be the most extensive career week for companies and professionals. It's going to feature a career conference, a job fair, and a hackathon. If you're interested in being a partner, please reach out to us or visit our landing page at x.glints.com. And then we also have a mini series that we're kicking off next week. It's called The Future of Hiring, and it touches on many of the themes that we talked about in today's webinar, particularly around building and managing remote teams. If you want to learn more about how you can start your very first remote team through offshoring, please join us. It starts next Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Singapore time, 30th of June. Please RSVP. And that's it. Thanks very much, all of you, for joining us today. And I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.